Welcome back to the Atlantic Construction Podcast. Excited to have our guest today, Chris Pickup. Chris is a realtor with EXP Realty and also has his own real estate endeavors on the side, flipping homes and investing in properties with his wife, Beverly. So, excited to have a chat today on the real estate side of things with somebody here in the local market who is on the ground floor in an entrepreneurial sense and as a realtor. So thanks for being here, Chris. Appreciate you.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, man. It's great.
On.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we usually start by, just kind of taking a step back and, telling us a little bit about just the journey for you into real estate. I know it's quite recent and something that happened kind of during the pandemic years. We don't want to bring that word up, but just give us a little bit of the Coles notes on your kind of how you got into real estate and as a realtor with
Sure.
EXP.
Yeah, I mean, there's two separate timelines for me. There's the getting into real estate from an investment lens, investment perspective, and then getting into it as a full-time realtor. So going way back, like I was one of those HGTV kids who, like, I don't know if that's a term, HGTV kids, but I just grew up watching HGTV. I loved Mike Holmes. I loved watching, like, Flip This House. Like, I loved watching all the reno stuff, and it just got me wanting to try stuff. So I just eventually started asking my parents if I could start doing renos around our house. Like, can I fix the cladding on the fireplace? Can I redo our floors? Like, all these things. So that just got me in that space, and that continued. And
how old were you at this point? I mean, this was always there, I guess.
I would have been like 16 maybe when I started that stuff. But from the time I was 8, I thought I could do everything. Like, I remember building the deck and my dad was having trouble getting a nail in, and I was like, "Here, give me the hammer." And I just thought I could do it. I just always...
Is your dad in the trades?
No, he was a principal. He was an administrator in schools for 35 years. So, but he was pretty handy. So we would build decks. We would do stuff. So I was around it lots, and my uncles ran a contracting company in Cape Breton, and so it's always something that I saw as positive and something that I enjoyed. And I just wanted to be around. I always saw a future in some area of real estate. I just figured it would actually be more in the renovation or building side on some scale. And then with real estate investment, it started when we had our first kid. So in 2016, we had our son, Jordan. And with that came a whole new wave of, like, realizing all that I was responsible for. Realizing I was responsible to raise and provide for now a wife and a son, and that really hit home. And it was the book The Wealthy Barber by Don Chilton, I think his name. That, like, kind of set me on this path of, like, hey, I need to start studying and be intentional. I need to be investing in something.
I know the book. What's that guy on Dragon's Den at one point?
I think he was.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're right. He released a second one called The Wealthy Barber Returns, just to update some of the strategies.
Right. He's Canadian, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So his strategy is more investing. Like, initially was investing in mutual funds, and then he updated it to more like index funds tracks, from what I understand. But that's not really my route or what I have chosen. But it triggered something in me that I need to be intentional and I need to be learning. And so when I was looking around at, like, what I could actually potentially have some success in and have interest in, real estate was a natural choice. So that got me into educating myself on it and eventually buying our first rental property. We actually owned a rental before we owned our own home. That was, because we lived in Vancouver at the time. We were living and working out there, and it was every day I would go and look and scour the market in Vancouver. And I would just, like, it was so deflating and so defeating because it was just
at that point in time in 2016.
It was such an unattainable market to foresee getting into. So then after maybe 3...
Because of the such an expensive
because
market.
of the price, yeah.
And
we were willing to try anything.
It's still the most expensive place to live in the country, right?
Yeah, and it's one of the most, when you, like, compare it to salary, it's one of the most unaffordable cities in the world still. I think it's like the third most unaffordable city. It's unbelievable. Like, Toronto's more expensive, but it's more affordable because of the higher salaries on average in Toronto. It was, for us who were working, like, with, very basic salaries, low level salaries, it was not in our future to own homes in Vancouver. So I just, after maybe 3 or 6 months of looking, I started looking back here in Nova Scotia, where I'm from, where I have some sort of an advantage. And after maybe 6 months of research and studying properties, we made the plunge and bought our first rental. But we didn't buy our actual first home that we lived in for another 2.5 years.
Right.
Yeah. So that was kind of the launch into real estate investing, and it went on from there. But getting into real estate sales, it happened like you say. It was actually I got into real estate sales at the worst time, because there was this crazy run up all through the pandemic, the first year, 2019 into 2020, like maybe fall 2019, it had already started where people were overbidding on properties. So it actually started pre-pandemic a little bit. But then heading into 2020, things just went crazy, and 2021 kind of being the height of it. And then I got in the end of 2022, which was when things started to really die off. So I entered into in terms of the number of transactions that were happening, like the number of homes selling went way down near the end of 2022. So it wasn't actually a great time to join, but it's okay. It was the right time for our life. But I got into it because I had spent so much time studying and researching. I discovered Bigger Pockets. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a website for teaching real estate investing. And then another big one was a YouTube channel and a book called One Rental at a Time. That one really hit home, because that's really, my story really mirrors his story, Michael Zuber. It's really inspiring and really encouraging, and he's very educational. So I learned a ton from those things. And I just, the fire continued to burn for learning about real estate and wanting to apply that knowledge. So I eventually knew it was time for a career change, and real estate, becoming a realtor, was the next right step. Paired perfectly with what we were already building on the real estate investing front. And it was something I really enjoyed. When I talked to my friends about it, they'd be like, you might need to do this full time, because you make me want to be involved in real estate when you talk about it, because it was just something that was contagious within me. So
You're passionate about something. It's what you talk about.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. That's all I wanted to do.
The first property, the first investment that you purchased and fixed up, you mentioned you do all the construction side yourself, and your dad kind of helped do it together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's a pretty good skill set. Not everybody has that either on the real estate side either, to be able to go in and do the renovation themselves. I mean, you said you get electrical in to do permitting, but you basically take care of most of the scope. So that's
right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things.
Get your hands dirty.
Yeah, and I do it because I just really enjoy it. It's part of what actually keeps me sane in the process.
Yeah.
I
it's
really
more tangible, right?
Exactly.
I
need to see some physical progress, some tangible progress
Yeah.
in a day, because again, in sales and a lot of industries, you don't have that, but it's such a rewarding feeling going home actually having accomplished something. So even sometimes if I'm stuck in a rut, I just need to go and take one little project off on something I'm working on, and it'll start to rebuild momentum already. So I just need it myself. But then there's the other practical side of it. It saved me tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Not only that, but it can be stressful too, right? I mean, you have a group of trades that you work with that are trusted, that are quality and trustworthy and stuff. But there's a lot of times it's hard to find those. Everyone's busy, so you're taking more than just money off your plate, right?
True.
It's mental energy and
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are lots of great ones out there, but you also
hear
the horror stories out there of people who
especially for your first one or your first 10 or your first
exactly.
right, yeah.
And a lot of people do end up growing out of it, and they're like, okay, I'm to a size now where I just want to hire it out for somebody to manage it, or I want to hire this stuff out, and I don't want to do the renos anymore. But for me, at this point and for the foreseeable future, that's just part of what I enjoy. And I get to do it with my dad, like you said. And that's something that I had a big realization from one of the guys who I've learned the most from, one of my online mentors. His name is Thatch Wynn.
Yeah, you mentioned him before the podcast.
Yeah. He talks about how his dad died of cancer pretty abruptly, and he was taken from him. And he said and he was very wealthy at this point. He was and it didn't matter how much money I had. I couldn't get another day back with my dad. And for me, I have always had a pretty good relationship with my dad, but when he said that, it pre-warned me for what could happen to me in the future. And I'm like, okay,
Meaning you would be so busy and so caught up with it that you wouldn't. Is that what you're alluding to? Or
that's what I'm kind of getting. Is that I don't want to. I want to cherish every moment that I have with the people around me in my life. That was kind of his message. Cherish your life. Don't just cherish the things you're pursuing. And so for me, it was in particular with my dad, because of his story, I'm I get to cherish almost every day. My dad and I are working on something together. We're aligned in something. We're always working on the same project, and that's something that real estate, and particularly doing our own renovations, has afforded us. If we didn't do our own renos, like it wouldn't be the same at all. It wouldn't be the same thing. So
At the same dynamic.
yeah. So learning from Thatch's lesson, I'm trying to maximize my time with my dad while he's still here, and not live with the regret of, well, I wish I had spent more time with him, or with my kids, or with my wife.
Yeah, and I think a lot of business owners, and I mean anyone who's, career driven and in the world, sometimes that's the way you have to be just to get by, and with an expensive culture that we live in. But at the same time, maybe especially in real estate and construction, it's very time consuming. It's very demanding for time and money. And so that in particular, like to have balance is something that I think everybody struggles with in this arena of work.
Yeah, that's such a common and popular word, and the whole idea of balance and life balance, and how do you strike the two? And there's no way getting around it. Like, the life of an entrepreneur is a busy life. If you want to start a successful business from the ground up, there's no way getting around time investment and energy, right? Yeah. But for me, it was, is there a way to still get the best of life? Is there still a way to move the project forward, move the business forward, even if it's at a slower pace, at a pace that still allows me to invest the way I want to in my family? Because for me and my wife in our hierarchy, like our family, our marriage and our family are above any of our businesses, any of our interests. We don't compromise that for anything. The analogy I heard and best described it for me was that life is like you're juggling like 4 or 5 balls at a time, but there's only one ball that's made out of glass. And that glass is your wife and your family. It's like all the other balls you can drop and they'll bounce. They'll come back in some capacity, in some form. But if you let the family ball drop, that one breaks. So don't drop the damn ball.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah. So I heard
it's
that.
It's so easy to forget too, right?
Yeah, it is. It's probably the one that's easiest to take for granted, because, well, like, they're always going to be there, right? I'm not like, they're not going to go anywhere, like, and not even in like oh, she's not going anywhere kind of way, but it's just something that we presume is going to be constant in our life, when in reality, I had a busy stretch in real estate. Just this past spring, it was like I had 4 deals going all at the same time. I was on the phone a lot. I was doing paperwork like a lot, and I ended up missing like a week and a half straight of dinners with my family just because of the different like work required. I was up late doing paperwork and whatever. And I ended up saying to Bev, my wife, I was like, I can see how people would end up divorced after 4 or 5 years of this, because she would be entirely sick of me because I was not present. I was not around. And our relationship, even just in that like 1 to 2 month sample of really full tilt going at it, for me as a new realtor, it was a lot on our family. So that was actually definitely a warning shot for me to say, okay, keep your eye on what you truly value and what you're truly working towards.
And you got to do that at the same time where you have the pressure of, previously maybe having a salary position or some kind of security in that regard to, now you're a broker with commissions based on success, and I mean, you have your own real estate properties and income properties that you're building a portfolio on, but
100%. When you're a salaried,
I know there's a lot of listeners who are going to relate to that, right? Sure. You get to take sick days, right? You get paid time off. If you're an entrepreneur or a business owner and you don't go to work, you just don't get paid. Like, there's a number of times we've had that conversation between me and my wife where we knowingly chose the sacrifice that meant we weren't going to get paid 90 days from now. But sometimes you make that sacrifice and you live in that tension. It's a tension always to be managed in business. It's investing in the business and the future, which is meant to bless and help your family. But you better make sure you have a family at the end of it and not just a business. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that fall into that rabbit hole. And as you're saying that, you can almost feel like a compassion for them. Because I feel like, you have that within myself. Like it could happen. It happens to a lot of people in our culture now, and it could happen to anyone.
For sure.
it just swallows you up, right?
What's the feeling that you're left with on that? And again, it's something that I lived in stretches for sure, but it's like, what's the result is that I'm failing on every front. It means I'm failing because I'm trying to give more time to my business, I'm trying to give more time to my family, but as a result, I'm taking time away from earning income. But I'm not fully there with my family so that I can at least make some income. So anyway, you feel like you're failing on the family front because you're not there as much as they would like. And you're failing on the business front because you're not there enough to actually earn what you want or need to earn. So yeah, it's the resulting impact on a small business owner can be a serious one, can be a profound one.
Yeah, and I think it's not for everyone. And sometimes it fails, things fail, and it's nobody's fault, really. It just didn't work out. Or other times you can look back and think, well, I could have done this or could have done that, and a deal didn't go through. You went through a bad stretch, and you just didn't have the capital or the overhead to get through it, or whatever it is. But people try and fail, and I think there's a lot of maybe people on the other side who, I wish I would have started my own thing or this or that. But I guess if you haven't been in those shoes and walked that journey,
I'm really glad you said that, because I think that especially being in the real estate investing world, there's a lot of glamorization and there's a lot of pressure around being
we
an
spoke about
entrepreneur.
this earlier. It's
like there's almost like
there's a glam factor about it,
for sure. And just being an entrepreneur in general, like owning your own business. I don't have to work for anybody. I work for myself.
You live
I don't
in
have
the
any
life,
bosses.
and you don't have to answer to anybody, and you have all this freedom. And again, like I think of programs like Traction or other business programs where it's all about like you actually own the business, or does the business own you and own your schedule and own all your mind and your energy and your effort. Like it's
That's right. Did you like that old adage, like did you buy a business or did you buy a job, right? Because a lot of people buy jobs, and if they're not there, their business doesn't work. But there's a lot of glamour around it, and like I say, pressure to where people feel like they almost should become an entrepreneur. But a lot of people that I've listened to, like actual business experts, are like the number of people who are actually cut out for the risk required to run a successful business is very small. Not many people are actually. So like most people actually are better suited working for a company in a salaried position. And I think that the one of the online mentors I mentioned, Michael Zuber, he's the one who really puts that really plainly and really clearly to me. It's like he actually caters his whole training and his whole business to supporting workers, like people who work in full-time positions, and helping them invest in real estate on the side. Because for most people, the entrepreneurial path is not going to be a successful one.
No.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah,
and that's okay. And I don't know. I don't know if I have the stomach for the risk required to run a big business. We run small businesses that serve our family, but I don't know that I could take the level of risk required to really launch a successful big business, big company.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It's so true. I think the more people you talk to, certainly on this podcast and in your circle and in the work that we're involved in, like that's really the biggest difference when you look at owners and partners and CEOs and the people that are in these positions. You could say, they obviously have the competency, they have the skills and the experience and the knowledge to do the work, but a lot of other people have that too. And a lot of times people who have all that, they kind of get grinded a bit of why does this guy have all this more than me, if you want to look at it that way. But I don't know if they understand or they get the fact that the real difference is their comfortability with risk and their approach to it and their analysis of it, and like they're risk takers. And basically the bigger, especially like when you're looking at like construction management and large construction projects, like you're just taking on risk, and that's what these people are really, really good at. And sometimes you miss that and you think like you expect them to have maybe in-depth knowledge of like the numbers more. I mean, everything's got to be by the numbers. That's at the bottom line. It's a big part of it. It's always going to be. But a lot of times they don't maybe have the same what people would assume they have when it comes to like depth of knowledge in these different things. They just really understand people and they understand risk.
Yeah. I think like there's that adage that like all the information is out there for everybody in the world to be fit, to be happy, and to be wealthy. But the difference is often, do they actually do, like fitness is just a great example. Like if you ask somebody, what does it take to be fit? Well, like almost everybody could tell you, well, like I need to eat fewer calories, I need to exercise, I need to get good sleep, right? It's like everybody could say that, but how many people actually have the focus and the discipline to actually do it every day? It's actually in the doing that things are often made. So entrepreneurs, like people who run these businesses.
Doers,
they do the thing, and the doing is usually involving a healthy amount of risk. You know why that guy's in this chair and you're in this one? Because he put all his life savings on the line to start that company. That's why he's over there.
Yeah. No, that's very true. So your first house flip, how did that go? Or I might be jumping the gun because I think you mentioned earlier that you've retained your properties as rentals.
Yeah.
But the first one, it went well enough that you did it again, and that's usually a breakthrough for most people, right?
That's right. Yeah. The first one was, we knew from the very beginning it was going to be a long-term hold. It was a duplex. It was a 2-unit building out in Lower Sackville. And we knew that with time we were going to hope to renovate it. It wasn't in very good condition, but it was something that we could afford, and it was something that I saw that could perform with time. And so as there have been 10 changeovers, I'll go in and I always update something, make it a little bit better than it was previously. And so we still own that one 7 or 8 years later, and it's still a nice little asset for us. And that home actually helped us buy another rental down the line. We ended up refinancing it, pulling a down payment out of that property, which actually got us what ended up being our third property. So it's been a great little property for us. And then after that one, that was the only one that we bought like not needing to touch right away. Basically all of our other properties we've bought knowing that from the get-go we were going to need to do a pretty serious renovation to make it what we would be comfortable renting out to people. So we kind of have a target buy box that we look for. We look for properties that we can immediately add value to, basically. Something that has an unfinished basement. We've got one of them that had recently had a flood and the basement was trashed. We had another one that just had a very strange layout. Somebody renovated the property 25 years ago to be exactly what they wanted, but nobody else wanted it. So it was sitting on the market. And so we went in and we said, well, we could make this back into something that would actually be a really nice property. So we did that.
Well, that's a crucial phase, though. It's just picking the right scenario where you know this is going to be the budget, like even where you said there's a flood in the basement, just what's the level of damage? What's my budget for getting this place to up to par enough to have it certain standards?
Yeah, that's where the risk comes in, and knowing how to okay, is this property going to be okay with time? How much money is it going to actually take to get it up to earning income? Because that's a big.
It's easy to miss something too. It could be structural. It could be a crack in the foundation. It could be anything where it's like, oh, there's another 10 grand or another 20 grand real quick.
Yeah. And some things don't even rear their heads until 5-10 years down the road, right? You can't know everything. So it's finding a good buddy and an inspector, right? Making friends with the inspector, but also just being educated yourself in what to look for, and that just comes with time often. The real wisdom comes with time and doing renovations yourselves. So once you've pulled a couple homes apart, you can see what it looks like on the inside based on some of the symptoms you're seeing on the outside of it. So
EXP, why EXP and not some other? I know it's international real estate, and you're a realtor with them. Was there a reason? I mean, you talked about their commission splits and different things, right? There's all kinds of maybe different variables you take into consideration, but was there a main reason why you chose?
For sure. So there's like the analytical side. I'm relatively analytical as an individual. I'm an overthinker, really. Before I make a decision, I really hammer out the details. So on an analytical side, their compensation structure, like their commission splits, the monthly fees, they have something called profit, like revenue share. Like there's lots of competitive things that they've done because it's a pretty new brokerage, so it's on kind of the cutting edge of kind of brokerage design, if you can put it that way. So on that
all
side,
cloud-based too?
Pardon me? Yeah, it's cloud-based brokerage, so there's no bricks and mortar. That's what allows the company to be more profitable. It's actually traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
Okay.
Like it's a publicly held company.
It's very contemporary then.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But it comes from the founder of our company being part of other brokerages and seeing how it can actually be better to serve the agent. That's the goal of EXP is to be the most agent-centric brokerage in the world. So the whole goal is to make it desirable for agents to come to.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things. Like they've also integrated, what they don't, I think, like calling it this, but like some multi-level marketing strategies, so that if you recruit people to the organization, they become part of like your downline.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a healthy thing for a business. You're gonna always kind of err on the caution of someone saying, "Well, it seems like a pyramid scheme." You hate to say that, right? Yeah. But it's not like you know what I'm trying to say. Because even when I say that, it's gonna sound wrong.
For sure.
And I don't mean that it is, and it's not. I just
no, it's not. It's out of the company's percentage of the commission split, they give some back to the people who actually brought you into the company. And what it creates is an environment where we're actually hoping for people to do well, because if somebody that I brought into the company sells a home, that means I get a little portion of money. So I'm hoping that guy does well. Whereas what I've heard is that at a lot of other brokerages, it's pretty competitive. Like there's no benefit to me for you doing well in sales. Whereas in our company, it's kind of structured so that you actually do benefit.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit, because I know that as a real estate broker,
I'm just a realtor.
As a realtor, sorry. Yeah. And I give the terminology wrong.
Yeah,
so I was asking that earlier, from agent to broker to
broker's
realtor.
the licensed broker who basically all the transactions have to go through.
Yeah.
I'm just a realtor.
But as a realtor, it's a sales position. And I think, again, entrepreneur, even if you're trying to build a portfolio of real estate, and I mean, so many, even other careers like a journeyman or foreman, like your ability to sell. I mean, you're selling yourself, right? I mean, that's such a big part of not just work, but life in general, and your other parts of your life that make up a fulfilling life. Talk about sales. Talk about what it means to you. Talk about what it takes to be a realtor and be successful, and what you've learned. Because it can be very draining, like having to just. There's a lot of rejection. There's the same old cliches of just like, you got to get out there, you got to, but it can be like a really mentally exhausting endeavor. Sure. And sometimes like it's just dry and nothing is happening, and you feel like, oh, you got to close. Yeah. But, what does that even mean? Sometimes like you can't just pressure people into situations that aren't going to work for them. And sometimes when to let go, when to continue, like there's a lot of.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point to bring up, because sales has a bad reputation for a reason, because there are a lot of people who have pursued exactly what you're saying.
Well, very self-willed, not really thinking about what other people need
and my outcome as a salesperson is actually what's motivating me, not your good as the person I'm supposedly serving. And even as realtors, we're supposed to be fiduciaries. Like we're supposed to be looking out for their best interest all the time. Yeah. And if you talk to almost anybody who's had an experience with realtors on some way, whether it was their realtor or somebody else, they've experienced somebody who's out for their own commission, right? So it's a hard balance to strike, because whether or not somebody buys that property like directly impacts what I bring home to my family. But at the same time, you have to be a person of integrity and realize my job is actually to serve the other person. So
that's an interesting point too. And I don't want to cut you off, but I feel like a lot of people, especially if you're in business or you have a small business where you can only take so much, the little wins are so big. And whereas a larger company could handle not being paid and their cash flow for a year on something and this and that, but all it takes is just one thing and you're broke, right? Yeah. And if it has to do with someone treating you in that way, that's more self-serving for them and not for you, then a lot of times the mentality you take on as well, if you want to make it in the business world, you got to be a shark. You got to be out for yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And in some sense it's true.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you do have to be out for yourself, but like
Yeah.
that's a hard balance to strike.
Yeah. So like for me, the thing that helped me the most was finding the right coach. So I did some training with a coach down in the U.S. And the reason I went with him is because I'm not a typical salesperson. I'm not like, I was just recently at a men's retreat, and there was this guy who was rooming near me, and we had like 4 or 5 interactions in the day and a half, the first day and a half. And I said, Brian, what do you do for work? Are you a salesman by any chance? He said, yeah, I'm in tech sales. Why? And it's like, you smell like a salesman.
Right.
You know, you can just tell. And it's not that he's greasy or whatever, but just the way he engages, his personality, the way he's always fired. Like,
it's almost machine-like. Eh?
Yeah, there's something about it. He's always looking to engage and looking to, I can't put my finger on it, but it's like you start to really be able to smell a good salesman, you know, salesperson.
Yeah.
But I'm not that. I'm like a really laid back, relaxed, like really kind of introverted guy, like naturally.
But it's good though that it's good, and that's not a negative thing. That's just a matter of temperament and just a matter of biological makeup. Or
I had to figure out how to use that in sales.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I'm not going to win trying to be the shark who's coming in and you know, wowing everybody.
And that can turn people off too, right? I mean,
exactly. So the coach that I found, his strategy is called reverse selling, where actually I'm going in with a service mindset. And my first step is actually to try and say, like, well, why shouldn't you? Like, what are the reasons why this is actually a bad idea for you? And then what happens is that in the process, they actually start selling me on why they should sell their home, you know? Because if I'm going in saying like, well, this is the right time in the market, like you see all these things, and you've already told me that you're ready to downsize. So are we ready to list this home right now?
Yeah.
You know, and you kind of try and put it in their word, like put your words in their mouth. But with reverse selling, it was like, actually, I'm just going to ask you questions, and you tell me if this makes sense for you, because this is your life, and this is your biggest asset. This is your retirement. This is about you, but. And then, anyway, that's the initial building of trust. Like for me, everything relies on building trust out of the gate. That's where I've had success. Is actually telling people, like meeting somebody face to face and having them discover you don't have commission breath. Like you're not just there trying to get a sale, that you're actually there to help them and to serve them. And actually, this might not be the right time for you. Are you sure this is the right time? It actually remember that. Engenders trust. It engenders, like they think that you're in it for their best interest now. So as a disposition, that's what really helps. And going out, actually, I'm looking for the no. I'm looking for reasons you shouldn't do this. And if it makes sense and I've earned your trust, and based on my market knowledge and my plan of what we're going to do with your property, you think you can trust me with this transaction. I think that's something that I'm not a high firing salesman, but what I am particularly gifted in is building trust quickly with people.
Yeah.
And that's where I've had, even off of one phone call with a guy who was trying to sell his home on his own for sale by owner, FISBO. And I got his number off the sign, and I called him, and I kind of followed my coach's pattern of how to run the conversation, very non-confrontational. And then he ended up calling me back the next morning. He said, no, I'm still going to sell on my own. But the very next morning, 10 a.m., he calls me. He says, like, you know what? I talked to a lot of realtors, and you're the only one I'd want to work with. Like, can you come by? I think I'm going to actually list my home. And it was just...
That's affirmation for you, though, right?
Yeah, for sure. And he said there were endless realtors who called him and who kept saying the same thing. Like, you're not going to be able to sell it on your own. Like, you got to list with me. It's not going to happen. You're going to get way less money. Like, they kept trying to tell him why he was wrong. I actually called him on the phone. I told him he was right. It's I'll say Brian. Brian, like, you should actually have no problem selling your home in this market. Like, it's a great time to sell. Homes are actually selling in under 5 days in Lower Sackville right now. So there should be no problem for you. But on the off chance that your home doesn't sell in, say, 14 or 21 days, like, would you be open to me giving you a call back and see if, like, it might make sense for us to at least sit down and have a conversation about selling your home? And it was just like, there's no confrontation. I'm actually assuming that you're going to be successful in what you do. I'm assuming it's going to go well. I'm not telling you you're going to fail, which is what most people were doing when they called him. Anyway, that impression just left him. He had already been trying to sell his home for 3 or 4 weeks. And so to hear that it was only like average sales in that area where they were selling in 5 days, like, he called me the next morning and said, I'm ready to sell it. Let's do it.
Wow. Yeah,
Anyway.
That's a great story, man.
Yeah. Anyway, and positive is that I actually got him over 30 grand more than he was actually asking
No way.
when he couldn't sell it on his own. So that was a pretty sweet victory.
Awesome.
He was singing my praises. Let's
I
put
bet.
it that way.
Yeah, he's going to remember you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk a little more about the market, the local market. I mean, I know a lot of people right now are, in a sense, it's hot because things are selling. And in another sense, like if you're selling because you want to turn around and buy, it's going to be expensive. A lot of major developers are putting up hundreds of thousands, even, 1,000 units on the books for multi-res and stuff. Like it's an interesting market, but what have you found? Where do you think we're at? What's happening out there? It's very up and down, I guess.
It's up and down. It's really an interesting market. It's really kind of an odd dynamic. Like by this point, a lot of people would say we should have already had a downturn in our market, like just based on the broader economics, based on what's happening in the rest of the country. Like you normally when say, Ontario gets the flu, everybody else gets a cold kind of thing, right? But it seems like we've been kind of, to a degree, we've been insulated here in Nova Scotia. Yeah. Like just looking at the recent like average sales data, we're still up from last year. Like I don't think we've had a down year all through the pandemic. Like we've continued to increase. I think we're up 7% from this time last year on average sales price. And it's like, okay, so we're continuing to trend up. It's really discouraging for people who are just trying to get into the market because houses just keep getting more expensive. And for the last 3 years,
so for that first-time homeowner couple who just got out of university,
I've had multiple family members and friends saying, like, I'm going to wait till things come back down. And I kept saying, like,
it's not.
It could. Like, I'm not. I don't have a crystal ball. Yeah. But I wouldn't bet on it coming back down next year when you're hoping to buy. It's like you should be looking to get as proactive as you can, find the right spot in the market for you. Anyway, it falls on deaf ears often because people believe what they always, that's another sales line. Yeah. People will never believe what you tell them. They'll sometimes believe what you show them, but they always believe what they tell themselves. It's like it's really hard to convince somebody against what they've already told themselves.
Yeah, I feel like I'm thinking of that line from The Wolf of Wall Street where he says that nobody knows if a stock's going to go up, down, or sideways. It's kind of similar with the real estate market. It's like nobody really knows what's going to happen, but here's what the experienced people think.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. So our average price keeps going up. This month, like September, actually this past month, we had the first time in a little while where actually like the number of listings has gone up and the number of sold homes has actually gone down. So there's a bit of an inflection there. We'll see if it continues. So there could be some sign that inventory could build, but again, what it meant for September's numbers was that there was 2.5 months of supply on the market, which means if we stopped adding any new supply in 2.5 months, all the homes would be sold. Well, a healthy market, under a typical definition, is like there'd be 6 months of supply. That's like a balanced market. Okay. So we're still, by definition, in a seller's market. It's still real competitive. But like anything, there are segments within that, right? Like I said, neighborhoods and areas leaning more towards the entry-level price points, they're still really competitive, crazy competitive. Where like, again, I talk about Lower Sackville, that's what I know the best, Lower Sackville and Bedford areas type thing. It's still 12 days or under is the average days on market. The average for the city is like 27 in September, which means that there are other sectors of the market where it's like average is probably more like 40, 50. So the higher price points, your home's going to sit longer. But the homes are still averaging to sell at 99.6% of list price. Like they're selling on average what they list for across the whole market. So our market has stayed strong. It's stayed pretty consistent. Honestly, for me, what concerns me is seeing, and like a lot of people are celebrating, realtors in particular, are celebrating the recent mortgage changes that came. That like now, first-time home buyers can qualify for a 30-year mortgage, which just spreads out your amortization. It means the mortgage is more affordable. But we don't have a demand problem in Nova Scotia. The problem has been supply of first-time buyer type homes. The builders often are building, well, I'm out of my depths here. I don't know many builders. You and your audience would know that much more, but often like broad trends across Canada, across the U.S., what builders are preferring to buy when they're building single family homes are higher end homes, obviously, because you can make more money. Most people aren't building,
middle of the road,
a 3-bed, 1-bath like bungalow, right? The profit margins have shrunk, and it's not as profitable. Whereas a lot of the new builds now they're a move up type property, unless you've come in with some real capital for some reason, or you're moving from out of province. But for the person who like grew up here and kind of the everyday person in Nova Scotia, like that's not a first time home. And so there's so much competition for those entry level homes, and we're not improving the supply in that area. So and the shifts that we've made from a mortgage perspective, including like dropping the interest rate and stretching it out to 30-year amortization, it's only going to actually add fuel to the demand that's already there for those things. So that's why I'm like, it hasn't gotten cheaper in the last couple of years, and it's not going to get cheaper next year. I wish I had a great message out there for the first-time home buyers. Other than that, you just got to get educated and get ready. And if
come up with that first 5% down payment.
Exactly. Get the 5% locked and loaded, get your finances in order. And when there's something that comes across the table that you can, like the idea of getting the dream home right off the bat, like that one should pretty near die, like that idea. Because it's pretty hard to get right now.
Mm-hmm. Buy something that's a good investment.
Get on the market.
Be able to sell it in a couple of years for a little more. And move on, just like what you did yourself. I mean, you've got got 8 properties now that are rentals. You're playing the long game.
8 units over 5 properties.
8 units over 5 properties, and you're playing the long game. You're renting them out. What's the long-term goal? Is there a few more in the near future? Is that just it's working out? Obviously, their rental, the income is working, and
a
lot of times people want to get in, get out quick, and make that quick money and move on to something bigger. But
and that's tempting. There have been almost every property that we own, we've been tempted at some point to sell it, because the immediate payoff is just so great, right? Once your home appreciates and you've paid down the mortgage a little bit, the temptation is real strong to think I could have $100,000, I could have $200,000 in the bank right now. But one, the taxes, if you haven't lived in the home, the taxes kill you.
Capital gains.
Capital gains hurts, and they've even increased it in the last year, right? But two, I every once in a while, my wife will talk me off the selling ledge and remind me, like, well, in 30 years, what will you wish we would have done? I'm like, well, in 30 years, I want to keep I wish I would have owned the properties, and now they're free and clear, and now they just bring in revenue every month. So we haven't brought ourselves to the point of selling any. And where we're at right now, I mean, we're open to like projects, because I've had a number of people reach out who are interested in partnering on some stuff going forward, because like I said, I can't help but talk about it. And lots of people, even I have lots of friends from other provinces, and they're like, they want to get involved because it sounds like a fun and exciting thing. But we haven't been ready to go there yet. We need to kind of fortify our business first. But we're not currently planning on expanding ourselves. We just want to actually get all of our properties up and running kind of to their peak, and then start the process of actually paying them down. It's kind of against what like common real estate investing advice is. But again, to reference Thatch Wynn, one of my online mentors, his strategy is like figure out how many homes it takes where the rent from that property could fund your lifestyle. And then he's like, go and buy that many homes. And it sounds real easy. Go and buy that many homes. But now I was like, okay, now we have that many homes. And he's like, and then devote the next stretch of time to paying those properties off. Right. Like, because then they once you have them paid off, he uses colorful language, but basically they can't mess with you. They can't take that away from you. And it's just an insulation on the rest of your life. So that's kind of what we have as our vision for the next stage.
I love that you're taking that other approach where it's like,
it's taking risk
away
back
from the
off
glam
the table.
factor. Yeah, you're taking the risk off the table. Yeah, you're doing it quietly. Yeah, it can be done. It's like, what is success anyway, right? I mean, if you're making that much money on rental incomes, I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, that's great. I mean, sure, you didn't flip something and made $500,000, but no, I love that. And your other approach with as a realtor with EXP, just the sales approach and how that works, and how people are saying, no, this is the first time a realtor's talked to me this way, and then you get them $30,000 more in the deal, and you're in the door and out the door, and it's great. Yeah, so I think
it's fun. So that's the goal now, is to have basically the income from real estate sales go towards obviously funding our life, but helping to pay off the rentals with time. And it'll be a slow burn, but it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah. I feel like this is an example of, long form content. People think, how could you ever do a podcast for like 3 hours? We're an hour in now, and I feel like we could keep going for 2 hours, but I want to be respectful of time. And I really appreciate doing this. Is there anything else that you want to mention, just that you want to kind of get out there, that you want to say to our listeners before we kind of wrap up, is that we didn't touch on maybe? Or, I love the message of the analogy of the glass ball, putting the balls and putting your wife and kids first. And I know that's it's just such an important thing to be reminded of. So I really, really respect and appreciate that you mentioned that for myself, of course, and then for our listeners too. But anything else on your mind?
I think what I would encourage people to is to take leadership in your life. And that's a blanket statement. It sounds real easy, but I have lived this in my own life, and I talk to lots of friends and a lot of people on my network that they feel like life is making the decisions for them, and that's a really, that can put you in some desperate positions, and that can put you in some uncomfortable positions. And to realize that actually you have autonomy and you have authority in your own life. You have the ability to lead yourself. You have the ability to lead your family and your company. And that might mean drastic measures. That might mean, upsetting somebody. But you have authority in the domain that's been given to you, and so exercise that. Now, with what I mean on a personal level with that, and maybe more practical, applicable, would be like start with designing a life that you actually want to live. Design, like there's this book that I was going to say read, but I listened to it. I don't read that many books anymore. I listen to most of them. But it's called Life and Air, and it's meant to play off of the word millionaire. But the idea is that actually you've built a life that is so valuable that it kind of replaces the word million, right? It's like actually you're a life and air. You're living the life that you want, and you're living it intentionally. I think so it's so easy to get drawn into living an unintentional life just by the needs that are right in front of us every day. And like we talked about maybe beforehand, like being a realtor, like it's so tempting to try and live like as flashy a life as possible, get the right vehicle, live in the right neighborhood, have the right accessories, right? But in the end, is that the life I actually want to live? Do I want to live a life where I sell 100 homes a year? I don't want to live that life. That's not what I want. That's not the design I want for my life. For my wife and I, how we've designed it, our legacy is our kids. It's our family. And so the first fruit, or the however you want to say it, like the primary energy of my day is going into my wife and my family. That doesn't mean it gets the most of my day every day. That's obviously impractical, but I'm giving them my best self at a certain point every day, because that's what we've decided is going to be our priority. That's our legacy we're going to leave the world, is our kids. And so for other people, it's like, well, like what life do you want to live? What do you actually want to leave on the world? I love the concept of the deathbed virtues. Maybe this is all way beyond what you're...
No, okay. Please keep going. I'm loving it. I don't really care what anybody else thinks.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the permission to keep going. The concept of deathbed virtues, where it's like, again, it can be so easy to live what seems like a good idea right now, or what somebody else says you should be doing with your life or with your time. But on your deathbed, what do you wish you would have done with your time? What virtues do you want to be known for? It's
so important to keep that in mind.
It really is. It really is. And there's that old kind of adage that like, oh, nobody, regrets, nobody wishes they worked more when they're on their deathbed, Like everybody wishes they spent more time with family. They wish they had more time with their children or with their whatever. And so like to try and keep the deathbed virtues in front of you is like, what impact do I want to have on the world? What impact do I want to have on my family? What do I want my family life to look like? For if you don't have a family, the relationships around you. So much of life boils down to relationships. And so, okay, well, how do I want to leave this impact, this? And then, that's like kind of big picture, and maybe hard to act on in the day to day. So, one of the best things, it's like really simple, but in starting to bring that kind of vision, that design of your life, to bring it to fruition, is the concept of just like picking like the most important next step, the MINS strategy. It's like, okay, I have this goal to start a business or grow my business to X. So like, well, like in order to get there, what's my most important next step? It's like, okay, and then in order to actually get to that, or like what would you need to do in order to start your own business? It's like, okay, well, I would need blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and you can work your way back to an action item that I can do today that works me towards my end goal, simply by following the most important next step. Like an example is like, if your goal is to get married and have a family, your most important next step might be to go and get a haircut so that you can get a date.
Take a shower.
Yeah. Shower consistently.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for that. Yeah. Anyway, so
sure.
that's what I would say.
I love the analogy of the book that you mentioned, or the life and air.
Yeah, life on air.
Because I mean, if you think of money, what do we think of? We think of currency? How do different people? Is it a paycheck every week, or is it a salary? Is it as a business owner? Is it margin? But money in economic terms is a store of value, a unit of account, and a medium of exchange. That's how it's defined in economics as currency.
Right.
Right. A store of value. Right. A medium of exchange, and a unit of account. So really, what's your currency, right? It ties into like thinking of it as currency. Time is currency. Your time is so valuable, right? Yeah. It's got value. Absolutely. It's a store of value. Yeah. So I try and think in those terms too, and it helps me to see the same.
That's great. Like similar, a lot of people are talking about now, like what's the actual definition of wealth? Right? What does it actually mean to be wealthy? Does it mean to have a lot of things and to have a lot of money? Yeah. I think it's more like what you're talking about. It's the same way how you can't
define success. It's too objective. It's too subjective. It's not objective.
Yeah.
Success to some people is staying sober for the next 24 hours. Yeah. Success to the next person is the next big deal. Yeah. It's spending more time with their kids. It's too subjective to define success. So it's really not. It's not a meaningful word, but to have fullness of life, whatever it is you're meant to do, that's worth pursuing.
You're preaching, man. You're preaching.
Hey, man, brother.
You're right, though.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. No, thanks for coming on. I appreciate everything you said, man. It was a really kind of rapid fire, but we touched on a lot of things.
That's great.
And,
it's been fun.
Yeah, I wish we could go for another hour. Yeah. But, I gotta go, and I think you probably gotta get back to those wife and kids, right? But no, really, thanks, Chris. It's awesome to hear your story, and keep up the great work. Congrats on the success that you've had and the approach that you're taking to it, mostly. And thanks for the reminder of just how busy we all get, but the important things in life. So thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Yeah, keep up the good work.
Cheers,
Look forward to seeing where you take the podcast.
Thanks, buddy.
It's great.
Cheers.